So I was watching that Andy Wallace interview on Rick Beato's channel, and there's a moment where Rick plays Smells Like Teen Spirit, and Andy just kind of zones out, and you can tell he's deep within focus listening to what he did. And there's some things I noticed about that particular moment. We can't read people's minds, but when I was watching Andy, for whatever reason, the point in my life that I'm at right now, I was able to sort of see something. I saw a guy who was finally, in a way, patting himself on the back in the best sense. I'm not trying to say this is a negative at all. What I saw was he basically understood that on that day he woke up, had the right breakfast, had the right amount of sleep, was able to deliver his best work so that later he could look back on it and be very, very proud of it. What we know as mixers is that on any given day, we could hit a home run or we could just throw it right into the dirt. There's not like an always thing for us, and everyone always expects us to hit home runs, but it's not always consistent. There's plenty of guys who are the best mixers in the world, like Andy Wallace, who've worked with somebody who will tell you that on that particular day, Andy Wallace didn't do a good mix for us in terms of what they considered a good mix. Because at the end of the day, it's all opinion. And you can't get in someone's head. So because you can't get into the artist's head, you never know if your opinion lines up with theirs, no matter how much conversation you have and front load the whole thing where you're going to mix it. So you want to get on the same page. So you want to hear references. So we know, but no matter how much of that you do, it's never going to always be where you guys are on the same page, ever. And this is because it's a human to human interaction. No matter how good someone is at writing a song or being the greatest lyricist or being the greatest musician, that doesn't mean they're great at communicating. I can't tell you how many times dealing with an artist is made way more difficult than it needs to be because of poor communication skills. And it's frustrating, but navigating that really determines a lot. It determines whether you'll ever get to the root of what the real problem is that they want you to fix or change, or whether everything will just devolve into, a castle made of sand that will crumble into the sea. It really doesn't. It has no correlation on how good someone is at writing a song. It has every bit of correlation to how good they are at communicating. And don't be surprised if the best artists out there are also the worst communicators, because that's something I've noticed is the people who write the greatest songs are impossible to communicate with. I don't know why this is the case, but maybe you guys have had similar experiences or not. But to me, it just seemed like in that moment, I was able to look at Andy and see him sort of be like, I did good to himself. And as mixers, we don't pat ourselves on the back enough for doing something good. Because we could make a mix that we think is great, and then if the artist texts us something like, we need to talk, our world could come down. It takes years to basically make it where you're strong enough and have enough self-awareness to be like, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. You have to be able to brush something like that off when they text you something like, we need to talk. Because I can't tell you how many times you'll talk to the artist and the artists will start with the thing they don't like, and then it could be something like too much reverb on the vocals. They will never say anything else, and you're over there like waiting for what's coming next. What else they got? What's wrong with it? And there's nothing else. So it's like, oh, so that's it? It's like, yeah, oh, I love the rest. Well, why didn't you lead with that? Why didn't you lead with the fact that you love it all? The only problem is too much reverb on the vocals or whatever the thing is. Like, what I'm saying is it's more common than not, and it doesn't make the artists bad people. It's just really hard to communicate. And I think once people realize that, you will kind of go out of your way to do everything you can to come up with ways of getting people to talk, almost like somebody who's, an interrogation specialist in a way. You have to kind of figure out how to get information without coming off like you're interrogating them, because nobody's going to want to stand for listening to you drill them about stuff. But at the same time, you need them to tell you things if there's going to be tweaks or changes to be made. There's not always going to be tweaks or changes to be made on mixes that you might hit out of the park on a home run. But on the ones that don't go that way, on the ground balls, on the infield flies, you need them to tell you something, because the mix can so easily develop a whole new character or personality. All you really have to do is feature a different instrument within a mix, and all of a sudden, the whole vibe of the mix changes. If you're pushing the low end, it will have one vibe. If you're pushing more in the mid-range, it'll have a whole nother vibe. And a lot of this comes down to little balance moves, which often are taste-based. Like, it's all based on your taste. And that's why, and this is different for everyone, but some people who mix in headphones only, for example, you have kind of, in my opinion, a very uphill battle to climb, because what I've known, and some people probably could do it well, so I'm not saying that it's not possible, but all I'm saying is you're in headphones, because if you don't use some sort of program to do a crossover in a way where you can kind of get some kind of phantom center happening, because there's some of the left speaker that gets into the right, some of the right speaker that gets into the left, and I'm on a camera, so this is my left, even though it looks like right to you. What I'm saying is that ability to kind of bleed one side to the other, the cross bleed, will create sort of a phantom center for you. But if you don't do that, and a lot of people who mix on headphones, they don't do that, what they wind up having is no phantom center. So as a result, you never really get a sense of what the middle is doing. You only get a sense of like this weird pseudo version of what the middle is doing. And that's really, when I break it down, that's what I had the hardest time about when mixing in headphones. So I don't, like, if I could help it, I don't do it. If I have to do it, I'll do it. With 3 different sets of headphones, with the plug-in can opener by Goodhertz, which is kind of a thing that takes your headphones and does that cross thing for you. But just something like that, and you could dial it in on that plugin, which is good. But this isn't a pitch for the plugins, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I'm just saying that's really the only thing that ever helped me get a little more of my head around what's going on in a mix while I was using headphones. But also, the fact that when people who get comfortable in a room, when they have that phantom center that happens when the speakers are in phase and you're sitting at the right position in the triangle, so much of this stuff can be so easily altered by your position in the chair. I'm talking about 4 inches one way or the other. If you're leaning like this, or if you're sitting further back than you typically do, or if you're a little further forward because you're leaned up super close, that 4-inch movement in any direction, depending on your room and how either well treated or not it is, it's going to drastically change the picture. So, what I had to do was basically take measurements in a few places around where I usually sit, and then over time I realized which one works the best. I had to basically make mixes, go into other areas like the car, other rooms, different, speaker systems, and get a sense of, okay, I mix this using this one. That's the best one for me for this room. I basically made 3 different choices for myself. One a little closer, one a little bit here, one a little bit further back. And the reason why, and I did this using the Trinov microphone thing to basically get me to put my listening position exactly where it is, to kind of line everything up as best as possible. What I found was the reason I was getting that wrong a lot of the time is because if you do all the stuff yourself, like if you don't have someone assisting you to help out, you don't really know where your head exactly is. As soon as you get up out of the chair and try to position a microphone where your head is, it becomes very difficult. So knowing where my head is, I was off by a few inches, and it doesn't take more than 4 inches to drastically change how much bass you hear and stuff like that. So when I find why people have a problem with this stuff and why it becomes so overwhelming for people to sort of dial their room in or dial their speakers in, dial the height of the speakers in, all these things, it's because a little bit of error in any direction creates completely different results in terms of what you hear, which changes what you mix completely. So when I hear people, making a mix that where I hear compression being too obvious, I don't know if number one, is it a taste thing where they wanted that? Or number two, is it because they don't hear compression? Because of a lack of, where they're sitting compared to where they should be sitting by a few inches, and especially on bass frequencies, this thing gets big, and that's what is a huge problem a lot of times I find when people are testing either speakers or I don't know. There's a number of things that go awry when people make tests. And a lot of them is just where your head is. Because if it's 4 inches either way, you could think one cable is better than another. Oh, I hear a huge difference. Well, you're not sitting in the exact same place. And that makes a big difference. More than you think. It could make you trick yourself into thinking, that $1,000 cable is worth it. Trust me. You could go nuts with this stuff. So this is all to say that moment when I saw Andy sitting there, it occurred to me that, like, we need so much stuff to go right for us to have a good day, for the mix to translate to work, and then for all our decisions we made to be great. And so much of it comes down to the littlest things, like how many cups of coffee you had that day, whether or not you got into a fight, with your family, your significant other, your kids, whoever, like, whether or not you were upset that day, you were pissed off, you were whatever, you were starving, you didn't eat yet, it's too early, it's too late, you didn't have enough sleep. All this stuff is going to make a difference for your ability to make decisions, because what we do is so cerebrally focused. It's so between the ears and up in the head. Everything we do is subjective. It's like a sail blowing in the wind. So you can't think about it any other way other than Andy Wallace, in my opinion, as great as you are at any given day at being a mixer, your success rate is based on a lot of things going right, but also it's based on an average of how good you are. Because if you are good enough, then sometimes, even when you're doing a little worse that day than usual, it will still go great for you. Sometimes you're going to do better because of the average factor, then maybe a little better than your average, and you'll knock it out of the park, way out of the park. There could be two, fences back there. Green monster, you get way over that thing. So it just kind of, I don't know. I saw his humanity. I saw the fact that every once in a while it didn't go right. And I kind of saw a couple of those moments flash through his eyes, those that didn't go right. And then he realized, like, I saw him feel lucky that what has happened to him in terms of a few things he did that became very successful, and a lot of things. I'm not diminishing what he's done at all. He's one of my favorite mixers, and he explains himself very well. The guy's thorough, but I could also see that humanity factor, the fact that so many of us live in this world that when we do one thing wrong, we really come down on ourselves, too much so, where it hurts us the next day. And I've been there, so I know what that is, to basically, you put yourself on the line every time you make a mix, and then you might just go to your car and listen to it and then beat yourself up for the rest of that day because it wasn't what you wanted to hear, and you can't figure out why. And, you hear what needs to change, and every time you change it, you sit in your room and you can't hear the thing that you heard in the car to be a problem, so you try to fix it blind, and you go back and it's still a problem. Like, I know. That's why I invested in room treatment way over the top, like in terms of tons of it, tons of it, because I didn't want those problems, because I was coming from a room that had problems just like that, where I couldn't hear the problems, and I'd get in the car and be pissed off. And what I could tell you is certain things really pay off. And to me, that's room treatment, speakers, getting to know those speakers, getting to know that room, and moving stuff around until everything clicks. And when do you know it clicks? That's the sad part. You don't really know until you've worked that way for a long enough time. So while you're doing that and testing it out and trying different things, don't get down on yourself. Don't get down. You can't, because it slows you down too much, and then you lose out on what you could be progressing the next day. How much further could you be progressing if you weren't down on yourself? How many more things could you get done? Because as mixers, we need confidence. If you sit down to mix a song and you don't have confidence that you're going to do a great job, just stop mixing. Go outside, do 100 push-ups, work out, do something, clean your room, anything. Don't sit down to mix with no confidence. It doesn't work because every decision you make, you're going to doubt. You need to have confidence, and you need to actually deliver, finish things. And every time you make something good or bad, every time you go to the car and listen, just realize you're one step closer to being happy in that same scenario. Next time you go to the car, you're one step closer. You're one step closer to not needing that amount of car visits, to not needing, that amount of revisions, to not needing that amount of tweaks you need to keep doing to make yourself happy. Trust me. This is so mental. Mixing is mental. 1,000%. So, anyway, I hope it helped somebody out there, because I know there's plenty of you guys out there who are just like me, who go through the same stuff every single time and probably have been for years. But you're one step closer and 1 year closer to not doing that anymore. Okay? Take that with you. All right, Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. Subscribe. I really appreciate it. Hit the like button. Talk to you guys soon. You guys got this. Take it easy.